Alright, so today we're talking about the new Federal Reserve rule change that's going to affect each and every single person with a bank account, as well as an update to the stimulus checks. And speaking of stimulus paychecks, our next paycheck may very well end up looking just like this one, which is just cash in the form of a debit card. So that's what we're gonna talk about pretty soon. Very exciting stuff. And in the meantime, the next wave of paychecks will arrive by April 29th. But if you are filing with an ITIN number, an individual taxpayer identification number, or you're on Social Security, or you're on SSDI, please go to www.irs.gov/EIP and fill everything out, but make sure to bring your 1040 tax forms with you. Now, unfortunately, if you are waiting for a physical check from the government, you may not receive yours up until potentially 5 months from today, depending on your income levels, because the government is starting to send it out to the people with the lowest income levels first. But you know how they say that history oftentimes repeats itself, and if not, at the very least, it rhymes. Well, 100 years ago today was the start of the 1920s, the Roaring 20s. Meanwhile, the start of our 20s starts with an unemployment rate that is approaching above 20%, which means 1 out of every 5 Americans have now lost their jobs. And in the past 5 weeks alone, we have removed 26.5 million jobs out of the economy, which altogether roughly totals 33 million Americans who have lost their jobs. That's the highest levels of unemployment since the historic year of 1934. That's literally how far back we have to go to get to the same levels. That's the year Betty White was born. Probably. Meanwhile, corporate debt, all-time high. Student loan debt, all-time high. Credit card debt, all-time high. Snoop Dogg, all-time low, because he's not as popular as he once was. Meanwhile, the stock market just doesn't care for any of it, and it's not at all reflective of reality because it should be way lower. It's like it's having its own party, and we weren't invited. Yeah, welcome to the Roaring 20s 2.0. It'll be a time of freedom and prosperity. So they said. Instead, we got 1929. Let's begin. Hi, my name is Andre Jick. Hope you had a great weekend, and let's just start with the new Federal Reserve rule change, which was a change to the Regulation D rule. Up until recently, I had no idea what it meant either, but you know what they say, when in doubt, always regulate the D. It's a federal law that prevents you and I, the consumers, from making more than 6 withdrawals or transfers from our savings accounts or our money market accounts per month. And this rule was put in place to ultimately protect the banks from having enough money in their system to meet minimum money or reserve requirements. Now, you may have known that we could make an unlimited amount of withdrawals and transfers from our savings account using something like an ATM machine, or if we physically went to the bank. But what you may not have known is that even if you use the transfer something online or through your phone, that actually counts as one of 6 uses per month. In fact, if you ever moved your money from your savings account to your checking account, even if it's within the same banking institution, that still counts as one of 6 of the withdrawal transfer limits. And if you exceed those 6 monthly limit, then you will get hit with fees, which could potentially trigger even more fees if you don't meet minimum account requirements, like happened to me with Chase Bank. So just be careful with this sort of stuff, because banks are able to punish us by converting our interest-generating accounts into non-interest generating accounts and even closing our accounts entirely. But with a change to this rule, we can finally use our savings accounts just a little bit more freely. But in addition to our savings accounts being affected, this will also affect your money market accounts. So if you have your money parked in a high-yield money market account, then the change to the Regulation D rule will affect those as well. But there is a catch, believe it or not, because I actually went on the Federal Reserve website and I read the policy because I'm a nerd and I've got nothing better to do other than play Final Fantasy VII, but it actually reads the following. It says, the interim final rule permits but does not require depository institutions to suspend enforcement of the 6 transfer limit. In plain English, what this means is that the Federal Reserve allows banks but does not require banks to implement this change. So some banks may actually opt out of this change entirely and just continue doing business as usual, sticking with their old rules and old fee structures. Even though banks have been asking for a change change to this rule for quite some time to allow us to withdraw and transfer from our savings account more than 6 times per month, banks are still greedy corporations that want your money to go into their pocket. So just be careful, and if you're unsure, give them a call and ask if they're changing this rule because you don't want to pay those fees. But speaking of money though, this brings us to the most important part of the video, and that is the update to the stimulus checks. Where's my check? As part of the $2 trillion financial stimulus package plan that's part of the CARES Act, by now over 88 million Americans should have received their paychecks. And if not, remember, a new wave of paychecks are scheduled to hit our accounts by April 29th, so sit tight. But if you want to know right away, you can go to the IRS website and check using the Get Payment tool, and there you'll be told exactly when it's going to be directly deposited or physically sent to you. But now we're in phase 3.5 of the CARES Act, and there's something new on the horizon, and it's called the ABC Act proposal, the Automatic Boost to Communities Act. Now, unlike a stimulus, which we received in the form of physical check or direct deposit, if voted in, this will be something closer to that of a debit card like this. And this is where the government will deposit cash into each and every one of these little debit cards that it sends out. Now, this is not a debit card. This is actually just my American Express credit card, which only has $1 left on it, but the actual proposal will be very Ellen DeGeneres. And it states that it will give every American $2,000. And when I say every American, I do mean every American. You can be claimed as a dependent, you can go to high school, you can go to college, you don't even need a social security card, and you don't even need to be a citizen. So basically every American and non-American will receive $2,000 deposited, no questions asked, onto that debit card. You could literally go to any ATM machine and withdraw that $2,000 and spend it however you'd like. Now after that, we will each be given $1,000, which will be deposited back into our debit cards that we can use however we want for up to 1 year after the illness has ended. Now, if you're financially responsible, you might be asking, who paying for this though? And that's a great question. It'll be funded by minting 2 platinum coins, each worth $1 trillion. This concept was originally created in 1992, if my memory serves me correct. I was only 3 years old at the time. I remember it like it was yesterday. And it was made popular in 2011 during the debt ceiling crisis as a way to bypass the country's borrowing limit. Now, the coins themselves will probably end up looking something like this silver dollar right here, except made out of platinum, which also gives me the chance to show off my magic skills. But whatever you do, don't give this $1 trillion coin to a magician, because then they'll just make it disappear, and then they're just gonna pretend like it's not palmed in their hand. But seriously, you know what else is worth $1 trillion? Because I do. I've got it. This $10 trillion bill from Zimbabwe. And this is terrifying for a number of reasons. Now, on one hand, I'll say this is a pretty great way to ensure that everyone gets help, especially those without a bank account. And if you have a permanent address, the card will be mailed to you. And if you don't, you can walk into any FDIC insured bank, which is pretty much all of them, and get your card right there and then. And because it's going to be given to basically everyone with a beating pulse, it's all inclusive, which is a good thing. But maybe, on the other hand, if you're a saver like me, or probably you watching, then this is not such a good idea, because the cost of doing this would be huge. Even though it sounds appealing, it's the American taxpayer that's going to end up paying for this through inflation with the rise of goods and services. And even though I know it's not quite like printing money out of thin air, it still has its own pros and cons, its own little flaws, and we have to be very careful with how we approach this. But if you're against the idea of UBI, or Universal Basic Income, then this is starting to look something like Universal Basic Income, or at least a warm-up to that. I actually recently did a video about Universal Basic Income where I showed just how much it's going to cost the US government and the US taxpayer, and it's going to cost something on the order of $3 trillion per year. And that's not even counting the initial $2,000 deposit for each and every American, and it doesn't count for the fact that this one is given to everybody as opposed to just people ages 18 and up or non-dependents. But the best thing that may come from this entire proposal that no one else is mentioning is the fact that there is room open for digitizing the US dollar. And this would be an incredible thing because it may enable crypto-like features to the dollar, which would entirely legitimize everything that the cryptocurrency community has been trying to build in the last decade. And if this happens, this might create a bridge between the crypto community and the legitimacy of the US dollar, which would be huge. So as long as the US government is on board and they build these on and off ramps for access to money quickly, then this will be a game changer for the crypto and the Bitcoin communities because it'll give us a more democratized form of money. I'm not sure who's running the numbers in Congress, but they seem so out of touch with reality and the American public with regards to just how much money people actually need versus how quickly they actually need to get it. If you remember, Bill Gates went on the Ellen show and she asked him just how much those pizza bites were. $22. I really do wonder if anyone there actually runs the numbers to see what economic impact this will have on us in the future, but I'm guessing no one actually does. They're just like, how much money do you think they need? 2,000? Yeah, I like that. Nice even number. What about after? 1,000 a month for a year? Nice odd number. I like where your head's at. What about after that? After that? I won't be around after that. Not my problem. Also, public service announcement. This is very, very important. Number 1, please don't touch USO. Okay, thanks. And public service announcement number 2, if you did get your stimulus check, and if you're a renter, and if your landlord is harassing you to pay rent, like this real conversation between a landlord and renter, where the landlord is using your personal information and data, plugging that into the IRS website to check whether or not you've received your stimulus check, then that is 1000% creepy and 100% illegal. If this happens to you, you can file a police report immediately and get that taken care of. Know your rights. You've got the right to protect your personal information. You've got the right to not pay your rent or mortgage right now without being threatened or evicted. And you've got the right to smash the like button for the videos to help my channel grow to 1 million. You don't have to though, that would be just nice. Aw, thank you. Now, I must have freaked someone out if I timed that accurately. How did he know? I'm Big Brother. And second public service announcement, whenever you're receiving your paychecks, that you're receiving the real thing and you're not depositing a counterfeit into your bank account. This is gonna become super important as more and more of you start to receive your physical checks. A real check should look like this. So if your check looks anything other than that, most likely it's a counterfeit, so please do not deposit it into your bank account because you will be able to, and if you do, you may be penalized and that money will be withdrawn back from your account. Remember, real checks turn red where it has the seal to the right of the Statue of Liberty when you give it one of these. You'll be able to see it with a little bit of moisture, and if you hold this up to the light, the ink will bleed through and you'll actually see US Treasury written on both the front and the back of a real check. And finally, if you have a black light handy, you can shine it underneath the payee information, and underneath that, you'll see across 4 lines, fiscal service. Also very useful to check hotel cleanliness at the hotels you'll stay at in the future. Trust me. And above all, if somebody calls you and claims that if you pay some extra processing fee, that they'll be able to speed up the process of you getting your check, just blasphemer. Don't listen to them, that is a scam. So please be careful in the coming weeks ahead as you get your paycheck. This has been an important message brought to you by Frank Abagnale Jr. of Catch Me If You Can. Now, as for me, because I decided to be a good citizen and actually pay my taxes on time, they're gonna use my 2019 income, which doesn't qualify, but my 2018 income did. So that's what I get for being on time. In this case, it literally pays to be a procrastinator. See, Mom? I was right. And as usual, if you haven't already done so, please create your account with Webull, fund it $100, and you'll get 2 free stocks, one of which could be valued all the way up to $1,400. Get your other free stonk from Robinhood by signing up. That's free money right there. And I've got such exciting news because I've been working on a podcast that I haven't yet released, but it looks and sounds so good and I'm so excited. And if you have any suggestions for me as far as which guests you'd like for me to feature, let me know in the comment section below and I'll try my best to get them on and we'll talk business. It'll be a lot of fun. I'll see you all on Monday and Friday. Love you, stay safe, stay sane, and I'll see you very soon. Bye-bye. Hey Siri, when was Betty White born?
Betty White was born January 17th, 1922, and is 98 years old.
22? I said 34. Wow, she's way older. Betty Marion White Ludden. That's her full name. That's amazing. May she live forever. January 17th. She was a Capricorn like me. That's awesome.